Hey guys, and welcome to Dan Reviews It. This is a little bit late, better late than never, I guess. The May 2017 wrap up. I just got back from vacation, so a little bit late on that. But there's a few movies that I saw in May that we didn't really get to do one-offs for, although there are several that we did. So just to kind of recap the episodes that I already put out reviews for. We had, let's see, Guardians of the Galaxy, did that with Merlin. That was an A-. Great movie, another, worthy film in the Marvel franchise. Snatched, pretty good. If you're an Amy Schumer fan, I think you'll like it. I gave that one a B-. Up next was Alien Covenant. I discussed that with Merlin as well. He's obviously much more versed in the Alien universe than I am, but I thought it was a pretty strong entry. Certainly not up there with the best, but I gave it a B. And then finally was Baywatch. That was very disappointing. I had high hopes with the trailers. I always enjoyed Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but that one for me did not land. I gave it a D+. So let's take a look at 4 other movies from May. Most of these actually, are no longer in theaters, but will be out on DVD very soon. The first of them is Unforgettable. This is the latest in a string. We get 1 or 2 a year of these, of the sort of stalker romance movies. The most recent one was, I forget what it was called, but Taye Diggs was in it, right? And it was, like, pretty bad. But this one is actually even worse. It stars Katherine Heigl and Rosario Dawson as 2 women who... Rosario Dawson is the new girlfriend who is, very... placed herself in the relationship with this guy. Katherine Heigl is the ex-wife, and she is crazy. Now, I don't like Katherine Heigl anyway. Ever since, really, the bad-mouthing of some of her roles and some of the writers on Grey's Anatomy and this and that and the other thing, she just seems like a very difficult person to work with and unlikable on screen. There hasn't really been, other than Knocked Up, there hasn't really been a Katherine Heigl movie that I thought was that good. I didn't like The Ugly Truth and One for the Money, and I forget all, the whole string of the rom-coms she's done, and they're just not that good, and she's not that good in them. And she here is like, she's got just the craziest eyes and facial expressions, and I think some of that is the writing of the character, and I really do think some of it is her. Now, Rosario Dawson's okay. She makes some odd film choices as well. Many of her movies I like, and just about the same amount I really think are terrible. So this one, terrible. It's very cookie cutter with the guy not really believing Rosario Dawson. Oh no, my ex-wife is fine. Yeah, she's got some problems, but they sort of unravel each other's businesses, and Katherine Heigl Facebook stalks Rosario Dawson and pretends to reach out to this stalker guy that she used to have, and pretend to be her and meet up, and hopefully Rosario Dawson will get killed. And it's such a jumbled mess of a movie. And you go into these kind of expecting that No Good Deed, and what was the one? Was it Lakeview Terrace with Samuel L. Jackson? And you sort of go into this expecting a certain amount of camp and a certain amount of just sort of unbelievability, that you're like, okay, I'm just going to go along for the ride. Sometimes it works. One of the classics, obviously, is Fatal Attraction. But for every one of those, there's, I don't know, 10 or 12 that are just bad. Every so often there's one that kind of breaks through, and you're like, okay, it's formulaic, but it's all right. This was just pretty bad. Now, if I could say one positive about it, I suppose that it does take a couple of new tricks with it. I shouldn't even say that. It's all pretty conventional, but it leaves enough of a okay. That's a little bit of a twist on it. That I am not going to fail it, but it's bad. So Unforgettable gets a D. Up next is King Arthur. Is it The Legend of the Sword? Yes, King Arthur, The Legend of the Sword, the latest in the King Arthur tales. We've gotten so many of them over the years. I actually haven't seen too many of them, to be honest. I know the basics of the Merlin story, but it was nice, I suppose, to have a refresher. However, this is not really much of a refresher because it's very confusing. It's directed by Guy Ritchie and stars Charlie Hunnam in the lead role, King Arthur role. And I know sort of Charlie Hunnam's stuff. I didn't watch Sons of Anarchy, so I don't know him from that. But I've seen him pop up in movies and whatnot. And he's okay in the role. I don't know that he brings it to a new level, but he's okay in it. And then you've got what's his face? I can't think of his name, but I like him. He plays Dom Hemingway in that movie a couple years ago. It's escaping me, and I apologize. But he plays in it as well, and he's like okay. But the biggest problem with the movie is Guy Ritchie, the directing. It's just. Oh, it's not the kind of movie that lends itself to Guy Ritchie's style. Guy Ritchie has a very specific style, and I think it works for some movies and not for others. I think in a movie like Snatch, it works great. Snatch was a great movie. I think a lot of those '90s movies he did, probably lend itself to. I never saw Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I'll admit that, but I understand it's the same sort of tone as Snatch, and it certainly worked for Snatch. But a lot of the more recent movies, like I like the first Sherlock Holmes a lot, the second one's okay. I think the style really lent itself to the Sherlock Holmes series. Rock and Rolla, I hated. I give you that an F. It was awful. The King Arthur story, I just don't think lends itself to his style. I think he was the wrong director for this movie. All the quick cuts that he's known for, and the sort of the jarring, second by second frenetic pace, and the sound effects that go with it. It does work in spurts in this movie, sporadically, but honestly, not nearly enough to justify him being the director of this movie. The setup for the story is completely scattered. The CGI is just really over the top. It's really obvious CGI. It's mostly bad. Now, some of the action sequences are fair. I will say that. And like I said, Charlie Hunnam does an okay job. I can't really. The movie certainly is not faulted by him. I think he brings as much as he can to the material, but the rest of it it just didn't really add up for me. I felt like Guy Ritchie was trying to cram 4 or 5 different stories or even tones into one movie, and in spurts it works. It's not awful, but I definitely can't recommend it. And I know there's better King Arthur stories out there. I think I can't even remember. This is how bad the CGI and everything was. I can't even remember if I saw it in 3D. I think I did. And it just sort of was like a nothing, right? So yeah, I can't recommend King Arthur: Legend of the Sword. It's a C-. Up next is Everything Everything. This is a young adult film based on a pretty popular book of the same name. It stars Amandla Steinberg, something like that. She played Rue in the Hunger Games film. And then she sort of took a break from acting. We haven't seen her for years, and here she's popping up in this as this girl who is essentially allergic to everything, and if she goes outside, she's going to die. Her mom happens to be a nurse, so that works out well, right? So she stays in the house, and then the hot boy next door moves in, played by Nick Robinson from Jurassic World, and the two sort of make a quick acquaintance and then start chatting online and sort of develop a friendship, and a romance is kindled from that. So she decides he is worth risking it all. She eventually invites him over at the risk of her own life, and the two kind of hit it off even more in person, and so she decides, you know what, I'm going to escape my room and my house, and I'm going to go off with this dude. So that's basically the plot. It was okay. I was expecting a lot better from this movie. I am a fan of a lot of young adult stuff. You know, the romances that come to mind recently are The Fault in Our Stars and If I Stay, neither of which was like amazing, but they were very good, and certainly The Fault in Our Stars, you know, had me crying. That got the heartstrings, absolutely. But, you know, there's also a lot of bad ones. This one sort of falls in the middle. It's not as horrible as something like Vampire Academy, but certainly not one of the better ones. The main problem is, now the actors have tons of chemistry. They really do. I'll give them that. I mean, look, they're not going to be the next A-listers, but for what the movie requires, I think they do a good job. The problem is the plot of this movie. I mean, the general plot is okay. We've seen it time and time again. You know, Bubble Boy is you know, an extreme example because that's such a silly movie. But you know, we've seen this conceit before. You know, one person is stricken to, you know, confined to either, you know, a hospital bed or her room or whatever. And here it's the whole house, but she can't really go outside from that. So in concept, all right, it's been done before. But the execution, there's so many plot holes in this movie. So many things just don't add up, don't make any sense. Even just from a basic level, they don't make sense. The decisions made by all of the characters is just sort of crazy. I guess not the decisions, you know, for the two of them to go off together. That seems to make sense for their age and just for the romance factor. But there's a lot of like little things that I picked up in this movie that was like, oh, that's so ridiculous. Like, that would never happen. That didn't make sense. So there was a lot of that. And there is a twist at the end that is definitely going to be love it or hate it. I sort of liked it because I turned to my friend while we were watching it. He didn't want to go at all to begin with, so he was kind of poo-pooing it from the beginning. But I thought it looked interesting, and the previews made it look like something I might enjoy. But you know, I turned to him and I said, well, at least, you know, with that twist, something interesting happened. There was one interesting thing that happened in the movie, and it was that. So I leave everything with a C- as well. One more movie, and honestly, it's another negative review. I like to give positive reviews. I don't usually give negatives. Like I said at the top of this show, you know, a lot of the ones I did review earlier in the month in their standalone reviews got positive grades. Guardians of the Galaxy A-, you know, Alien Covenant B. These leftover movies are just not good, folks. I can't sugarcoat it. The final movie is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul. Now, the Wimpy Kid movies have steadily declined, really. The first one is great. I think I gave that a B+. The first one is really emotionally heartwarming. It's funny. You know, the characters are great. And then, you know, for the first three movies, it's the same actors. But now, years after the third movie has been released, I think 5 years maybe 4, but no, I think it's been 5 at least, since the third movie, we have a whole new cast because, you know, the kids are now like 18 or 19 that were playing the little, you know, 12 and 13-year-olds, and I guess maybe even younger in the first one, from the series. So in this one, you've got, I don't know any of these names, Jason Drucker, you know, plays the main kid, Greg Heffley, and then Roderick is played by Charlie Wright, and they've even swapped out the adults. In the old series, it was Steve Zahn and Rachel Harris, which I thought worked for the series. I thought they were funny together. Here, it's Alicia Silverstone and Tom Everett Scott, who, he pops up every so often. He's in the last sequence of La La Land, and I just saw him in something else fairly recently as well. But he's in one of my favorite movies of all time, That Thing You Do. Fantastic movie. And Alicia Silverstone, she's certainly had hits or misses over the years, but the two of them are just sleepwalking through this movie. They don't seem to be having a good time at all. The kids are okay, but the writing is so awful in this movie. The thing that was so great about the first Wimpy Kid movie was that it had a lot of heart, and it was, for the most part, steeped in reality. I mean, yes, you had the animated sequences, sort of harkening back to the book, and that was fun, but like, and here they have that as well. They stick with that sort of theme, but it was mostly kind of steeped in reality. And then as the series went on, the second one was like, the second one actually was not as good as the third. The third was like a little bit better, but 2 and 3, neither of them are great. They're both sort of acceptable. They're in like that C plus kind of range. But here it's like the jokes rely very heavily on, bodily fluid humor and, gross out gags. And the only time I ever got a chuckle, there was like, I would say 3 laughs I got from this movie. They're all from Roderick, the older brother. He's so dumb and he's funny. It's kind of like a Joey Tribbiani from Friends. Like, he's so over the top stupid that it's just like, all right, you can't really believe that, but it's funny the way he does it. So like, and I don't know the actor. Again, the name is Charlie Wright. I don't know him, but he was funny as Roderick in the few scenes that they sort of. His reaction was funnier than the line, for example, because the script is just awful. It's all these terrible sight gags, the potty humor that I mentioned, and then just Alicia Silverstone and Tom Everett Scott have no chemistry together, and they're both so unbelievably like just. I don't want to say dumb again, but they're just unbelievable as parents. Like, they do and say things that a parent that actually cared about their kid would never say, and they're also so stupid that I don't believe a real parent would really believe that the lies that their kids are saying, and it was just a mess. But like I said, I did get a few laughs from the Roderick character, so I can't fail this one either. So believe it or not, with all the negativity on this show, there's no fails, but like Unforgettable, this one also gets a D, by far the worst in this series. There's, every few weeks there's a new kids movie, and it just seems like this was so half-heartedly put together. It's just not something I can recommend. Maybe little kids would watch it and get a few chuckles, but, working at the movie theater, the one day I actually poked my head in, and it wasn't a packed house, but there was maybe, 20, 25 people in the theater, and it was a scene where, their clothes were flying all over the place on the highway from their luggage port, up top of the car, and it was supposed to be like a scene that was played for laughs, and, walking in the theater and just the absolute silence that fell over the crowd. Not one person was even snickering. It was creepy. It was like creepy that, not one person, even little kids, were finding this entertaining. So, it was actually before I had seen it, so I'm like, now I have to see this movie to just see how bad it is. And it's bad. So, yeah, that one's a D. So, unfortunately, nothing great in the May wrap-up, but like I said earlier, some of those standalone reviews, you can catch some good ones in there. I would recommend Guardians of the Galaxy, Alien Covenant, and if you're an Amy Schumer fan, I would recommend Snatched as well. And again, none of these are really in theaters anymore, but I was on vacation, so I didn't get to do a May wrap-up, so I wanted to at least get that out there. X-Files reviews coming soon on the channel. Buffy reviews also as well. Merlin and I have recorded the first of those, so they'll be put up very soon. There's a Mummy review, and there's one that got slammed by critics and many audiences. I liked it, so there's a positive review to check out. There's also a standalone Pirates of the Caribbean review, and I'm going to get a Transformers The Last Night review up as well in a standalone, and before you know it, Best of June will be upon us as well. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We keep getting subscribers, and that is awesome. Tell a friend, and yeah, you can check us out on Facebook as well. Dan Reviews It is the site there. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.